Good afternoon. I am joined by Emily Hicks, who is a co-founder of FREDsense Technologies. She is a program alumni, the Geek Starter program, and she is also a mentor to many of the teams who we work with in synthetic biology. And so I'm so delighted to be able to speak with you today, Emily. Because I know we're going to learn a lot about your innovation journey. And so I'm going to ask a couple questions, and then I'm just going to hand over to you. So the first one I have is, tell us a little bit about who you are. I know you studied at the University of Calgary. So give us a bit of a background on your area of study and when you came into this whole SynBio space.
Sure. So I have a degree in biomedical science from the University of Calgary. And so I kind of started down that route, thinking I probably wanted to be a surgeon because I was kind of interested in, the medical side of things. And that's what kind of people that, had good grades did, I thought. So I kind of started down that route. And then when I was at the University of Calgary in my first year, I saw this poster outside one of the rooms at U of C, and it said, come learn about genetic engineering and synthetic biology. And so I went to the open house and I learned about it, and I really didn't understand pretty much any of it. But I just kind of had this feeling that that was really cool, and I needed to figure out how to be part of that. And so I got involved in the university's iGEM team back in 2009 as a first-year undergraduate student, and just kind of fell in love with the idea of using biology to do something really interesting and being able to build something with biology. And so kind of stayed involved in iGEM throughout the rest of my undergraduate time at the University of Calgary, and then ended up kind of founding a company out of one of the projects that we had as an iGEM team.
Excellent. So you started with iGEM in 2009, 2012/13. We crossed paths through the Geek Starter program. So why don't we start there? Because at that point, the company, FREDsense Technologies, wasn't a company. It was a project, correct? So what was the project?
So back in 2012, our project was focused, at the time we were focused on oil sands tailings ponds, because we had got some funding from the Oil Sands Leadership Initiative, and they were really interested in, could we use synthetic biology to do something interesting and helpful for oil sands applications. And so we started to look at, could we engineer bacteria to be able to break down contaminants found in oil sands tailings ponds? But we realized that in addition to breaking them down, they would also need to be able to detect them. We'd have to have some kind of way to be able to measure these contaminants. And so we started this project of, could we kind of identify, make sensors for different contaminants that might be found in a tailings pond environment, and then could we do something to break them down?
Interesting. And so that project, do you recall kind of the general time frame for when it officially became a project?
So we kind of started that work in 2011, and at that point we were really focused on kind of the sensing part of it. And we did some initial work on developing an electrochemical biosensor for tailings pond contaminants. And so then in 2012 we kind of did that. We had a much larger team, and we looked at really kind of beefing some of that out, and then also adding some of that degradation side as well. And so we had this kind of two-part project around detection and degradation. And so that was in 2012. And then in 2013, we actually went back to iGEM a third time, but they had a kind of a business plan division that they launched, an entrepreneurial class in the competition. And so we wrote a business plan about what it would look like to take this. We focused a lot on the sensing technology at that point. What would it take to commercialize this biosensor, and what would that look like?
Okay. So then when was the moment where, and I know it can be a bit fuzzy, like there wasn't necessarily a day and you looked at the clock, but generally speaking, do you recall the moment when you or you and your team members said, we might have a company here?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I feel like, for the most part, it's kind of this, for us anyways, was kind of this journey of just a lot of really small little steps that didn't really at some moment we kind of looked back and realized, wow, like look at all the things that we've done. But, I'd say if there was any one specific moment, it was probably in 2014. So after we'd come back from iGEM, kind of wanted to see what we could do with this. And so we entered a whole bunch of business plan and pitch competitions that we could find across North America. And there was one of them out at Queen's University. And so myself, one of my co-founders, flew down to Queen's and gave this pitch. And it was us versus all these, kind of business students, people with MBAs, all sorts of stuff. And we really had no idea what we were doing. But we won the competition, and we won. It was about not a lot of money, but I think we won about $18,000 in total, which felt like a lot of money at the time. And I think that was just kind of that moment. We won first place at this big business plan competition, again, with people there that, knew what they were talking about. And someone kind of believed in it enough that they would give us a little bit of money. And that was kind of enough cash for us to kind of get a really small lab. We found some grant funding. We're able to hire our first employee. And at that moment, it kind of felt like we really, had started something.
Very nice. And so why do you think, other than having, I think, a really compelling value proposition, right? What other factors do you think compelled the judges to say, hey, we're going to put this team up front? Because you commented you were competing against all these business people, these, MBAs. What do you think it was?
I think it was a couple things. I think one of it was that we, weren't business students, but we had learned how to, through iGEM, how to really, sell something or kind of talk about it in an interesting way and get people to understand it that maybe didn't have a really deep technical background or something like that. So I think that really helped us. But I think the other piece was just that it was kind of really interesting story that kind of got people excited. So it was this big problem that everyone can identify with, water is super critical. Everyone knows that. And we were using this really interesting technology to try to solve that. And I think that's what got people excited, and that they saw that there was a lot of scalability to it. We could do a whole bunch of different things with this, make a whole bunch of different sensors. And I think kind of comparing that to, more traditional, type businesses that were getting pitched, starting a hair salon or a snow shoveling business, this just kind of had this extra kind of interesting factor. And I think people thought it was a little bit crazy, but they kind of liked that idea that, it was kind of a big shot in the dark to see if we could, really change something.
Very nice. And do you recall, how is it when we look at our programming that we deliver into the community to help students, first of all, have the creative space to innovate, right? So this is not a performative thing. Innovation is not performative, it's creative, right? And it's done frequently in many cycles. But what do you recall from Geekstarter or Tech Futures Challenged that helped you in some way advance your project?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different things that, kind of helped. I think just kind of having, a forum to be able to do this kind of stuff and meet other people that were doing it, through the iGEM project, I met, my co-founders that started the business with, and kind of met a lot of other people who are now in my network that, are really interested in synthetic biology or in robotics and different things like that. And I think just having that kind of venue for people to try things, because I think sometimes, there's I was definitely a very academic student, did very, very well in school, but there's kind of this other, how do you explore, how do you kind of experiment with things that maybe aren't, just straight up academics, but are something a bit more creative, as you said. And I think there's not a lot of good settings for that kind of exploration. And I think if I hadn't got involved in this kind of stuff, I probably still would have, just gone to medical school, because that's kind of what I knew. And so this got me kind of exposed to a whole bunch of other areas that I'd never really thought about for myself before.
Very good insights. And then the last question I have, and this is something that's very dear to my heart. We're hearing a lot about making space for diversity. And so diversity holds many different meanings, depending on the context, depending on, who's saying it, what lens you're looking through. But look, when we talk about the innovation space, we know that it is underrepresented by females, Indigenous, youth, newcomers, racialized, youth who are really situated in rural and remote locations, so they don't necessarily have access to these networks that we're talking about. And I know FREDsense has a diverse team. And I know that you guys work very collaboratively. And when I say collaboratively, I mean you have the richness of diverse ways of thinking. And I think there's a lot really that people can learn. And I would love to hear some insights on how diversity has served you guys as you've moved, because you've been working together now for 10 years. I mean, did you plan, oh, we're gonna be diverse? It just kind of organically happened, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it just kind of started, that way. And, we've kind of had fairly diverse leadership, I would say. So that kind of helps, us kind of have that lens. And so we're always kind of looking when we're hiring people, when we're bringing on student interns, whatever it is, we're kind of looking at it already with that, thought around diversity. But, it's definitely, served us well. And it's something that we're still focused on is, how do we see more, diversity in the company, especially, in leadership roles. When you look around at other, comparable companies like ours, they definitely don't look very diverse. And so that's something that we're really focused on, what can we do with that? And there's a lot of, interesting programs and initiatives that we try to take part in now to, try to look at what we're doing and always, look to improve, what we can do. Because we know that, especially in innovation, where, real innovation happens when you get all sorts of different opinions kind of coming together. And usually it's not just one way of thinking, it's kind of attacking a problem from a different way. So we know that diversity leads to that. But, we're trying to do whatever we can to make sure that we're, portraying that in how we run our business, how we hire, how we do all of those type of things.
Excellent. I so appreciate the time you've taken today. I know you are busy and you've always got many more things to do than you've got time. Now, one big thank you. I know you have returned to Geekstarter, which goes by Tech Futures Challenge, for many years. To help our youth teams in skills development and mentoring. So just a big thank you from everyone. We are so appreciative. And it's been so nice talking to you.
Thank you.